Hey everybody, HMV here, playing more Rimworld, and today it is Hermine's turn to get up early, and while she's playing horseshoes, another merchant arrives. This time, we might actually have something that they'll want to buy. $5 whole. Well, it's a start. Albert goes out to the mining site to take one swing with a pick, eat dinner, and then head back to the house. I don't think so. We've got a windmill to construct. Maybe building a huge metal tower in a thunderstorm isn't such a good idea. We get it built though, and now we can cook actual food. We've never even used the fueled stove, so that was a wasted effort. But it's late and time for bed. The next day, Hermine cooks up some of the last campfire meals while Albert takes apart that useless fueled stove and mines some steel for the new electric one. There we go. Now for the cooler. 6 simple meals and 6 fine meals. Whenever one of us gets good enough at cooking to make them. And now that we have a proper freezer, I can move all the stuff that needs frozen inside. It's kind of sad that when the wind is low, we can't even run our 2 powered things. We'll have to address that eventually, but for now, we should be fine just having everything inside. And tomorrow is another day. Hermine wakes as I'm planning the next room, and then gets right to work building it. Albert helps, if you can call it that. We need things I don't know how to build yet, so first up, I want a research bench. We're out of wood though, so first it's tree chopping season. And the first thing we need is alternate electricity sources, so I go right for solar panels. Hermine's the only one who can research, so I make it a bit more of a priority for her. Free rabbit! Hermine burns the midnight oil at the research bench, and then heads to bed. The next day, Albert wakes up and eats the last meal. I need to increase cooking and farming priorities now that Hermine's researching. Or I just need to wait for the crops to come in. As soon as they do, Albert gets to cooking all the meals they'll ever need. For the next couple days, at least. Hermine finally equips that short bow, and Albert runs out of stuff to do. Well, Albert, there's always mining to do, so get on that, buddy. Also, we need an outdoor stockpile for things that won't deteriorate, like chunks of rock and building materials like bricks and steel. And while they sleep, I plan our main workshop, at least to start. Here, I'm making sure it's big enough to fit 3 workbenches, which are each 3 tiles wide. And it looks, in spite of themselves, that Hermine and Albert are actually becoming fast friends. Can you blame them with how well they work together? So, in our workshop, we'll need a tailoring bench, and that light to not be right where people will stand. And we get some cargo pods, and a very nice find, 33 quality medicines. Now that is going to come in handy, and it's not even far away. I let them sleep, but queue up the haul order first thing in the morning. Don't want that medicine to sit outside for too long. Of course, it will still deteriorate because we don't have indoor storage other than in the freezer, so it's time to convert Albert's panic room into a proper storage room. First, we move those traps. Then we build the walls. And finally, the roof. We need components for those workbenches, so I queue up some to mine. Albert's resting though, so it'll happen eventually. And it's another late night of researching for Hermine before she retires to bed. And Albert gets up late at night to self-tend his asthma. And then, while cooking breakfast, we get another raid. Another lone attacker with another garbage knife. She's preparing, and by that I mean she's wandering around in the wilderness, giving us time to prepare. So we prepare for her by going about our daily routine. Eventually, she decides to attack. So we line up, Albert in front and Hermine in back, and wait for the melee to ensue. Hermine lands a shot with an arrow, and Albert a blow with his club. The raider goes down, and we get another free knife. I don't feel like burying the dead, so I set up a dumping ground in a little abandoned building not far from the village. I set it up in the light only so that the bodies will deteriorate faster from being unroofed. Albert's been hurt, but it's nothing serious. He should be fine. As is typical, Hermine spends the last hours of the day at the research bench before retiring for the night. And just a few hours later, Albert wakes, has an early breakfast, does one menial and non-productive task, and then goes to play some horseshoes. Then he decides to watch the sunrise, and I figure it's about time he haul that corpse to the proper pile before it starts rotting. Hermine wakes up and applies her nose right back to the grindstone as Albert decides to head back to bed. I make a stockpile for animal corpses that we can't butcher, so they won't take up room in the freezer or the main stockpile. And remember those components I told Albert to mine 3 days ago? He's finally gotten around to it. He hauls one of the 2 components he mined back to the camp to fix the broken stove. Fine meals take a cooking skill of 6. And Hermine's skill is at 5, but going up with every simple meal she makes. Soon, we'll be dining well. For now, though, it's late, and time for these 2 to hit the sack. Looking back on my past encounters, the number one thing that saved Albert and Hermine was the traps. And I realized here that I've shoved all those traps behind the base, out of the way, which makes them much less likely to help me out when I need them. I've put the work into building them, so repositioning them is quite easy. First, I built a small panic room, then I moved 2 traps into it, and finally, I door it off. And, as if on cue to tell me I'm too late, a pack of manhunters arrives. Oh wait, that's not a pack. It's only one, and it's a manhunting monkey? Oh well, let's do this. I don't have my panic room yet, so we just go into Trap Central. Albert and Hermine give each other a high five, and the monkey dies 8 traps before it would have gotten to them. Hermine goes back to sleep, and Albert wanders around. I noticed the trap I'd planned to move was one of the ones that the monkey hit, so I move another one instead. At least I queue it up to be moved. Eventually. Okay, we still need components for that tailoring bench, and the job to mine them is queued up, but Albert's got a few too many things on his plate at the moment. Literally. So I bump mining up to critical so he stops cooking and starts digging. Our panic room is built, so with luck it'll work out on the next attack. We get an offer to pick up some luciferium, but I don't really want to deal with that, and we are way too small a colony to go gallivanting off through the wilderness, so I pass on the offer. Albert finishes mining and hauls all the components back to the base. Hermine then finishes construction on our tailoring bench. I queue up jobs to make jackets, pants, and t-shirts, continuing until we have a spare of each. I set up each of them to require 51% hit points and normal quality or better. I also queue up a stone cutting table so we can build with more durable stone in the future. Marble and sandstone are the predominant stones in the area, so I queue up 200 of each, and then a further 200 for 600 total of anything that happens to be nearby. This will allow us to have stone bricks on hand, but not take up too much of our colonist time. And as night falls and Albert finishes the last of the hauling jobs, Hermine researches solar panels. So it's time now to start the long road to better weapons and armor, first with smithing. And it's also time to drop our first solar panel on the world to diversify our power generation a bit. But before that even, it's time for bed. While Albert and Hermine sleep, I decide to better make use of my traps by putting them on the sides of each door. And while Hermine does the hauling for once, Albert constructs our solar panel. Our cotton crop comes in, and Albert finally gets around to cleaning the outside of the base. While Albert moves on to tailoring, I use the home tool to shrink the area that he'll clean. I also disable auto expansion of the area, so I'll have to draw the home area myself as we expand. I actually prefer this generally. I like to have a couple squares out near wooden walls so we get a jump on any fires that threaten the base. And it's a weakness of mine. I'm never happy with the placement of the horseshoe pin. I just don't like it when they stand in water or a stockpile or next to a wall to play. Hey, what did I say about fires? Luckily, this flash storm is on the other side of the lake, so it shouldn't hurt us. I'd really like a better and more permanent power option than solar or wind power, so I scout for geothermal vents. Sadly, none are really all that nearby. 2 of them are way to the south, and a couple more are across the lake. We will be expanding across the lake eventually, so I guess that's when we'll tap those. I notice here that Albert has just made his 3rd jacket. He's wearing one, and an awful one is in the stockpile. This isn't a huge deal, but it is using up all the cloth we have, and he hasn't made any pants or shirts yet. And here comes jacket number 4. I really should have canceled this order and set the bills to allow for poor quality items, at least until Albert gets a little bit better with his hands. That fire is still raging across the lake, and I'm wondering if it'll threaten our base. Albert and Hermine, though, don't seem to mind it as they head to bed. As a rainy thunderstorm rolls in, I realize Hermine is unhappy that her room is technically a barrack, so I move that bed out into the research room. It can serve as a makeshift hospital bed or a prisoner room, depending on what we need at the time. An eclipse comes, but it's still windy enough to keep everything running on just the wind power, and Albert finishes up his 4th and final jacket. It's good quality, so he's now free to move on to pants. Which he makes, but they're poor, so he'll have to make some more. Eventually, when we have material. For now, though, he can cut up some stone. Looking around the map, I see where I wish I'd set up the base to start. It's got a big abandoned room, a nice wall, a huge rich soil patch, and a geothermal vent. And it's not even on the side of the map. But you get the base you have, not the base you want in this game. And as Albert and Hermine retire for the night, I'm going to do the same for this video. I'm wondering, what do you think about my moving? I was thinking about this a little bit, and I was wondering if I should move across the lake, or if I should perhaps pack it all up and move to a river. That would give me the power I want fairly quickly with water power. Tell me what you think, and I will keep it in mind when I start working on the next video. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I definitely enjoyed playing it. I'm HMV, and I will, as always, talk at you later.